So, we have considered some of the constant attributes of the essence chosen by it for the whole cycle of evolution in the manifested universe. These attributes remain the same throughout our lifetimes on Earth. These include the role, frequency, and balance of focused and creative, male and female, energy. In addition, the energy configuration of an entity is influenced by some persistent inter-entity relationships, such as the entity's counterpart, and the position of the entity in larger hierarchical units, such as the entity and the frame. When planning each of our specific lives, we also choose certain attributes of personality, which in the teachings of Michael are called shells, because they envelop the unchanging essence. These shells, or personality attributes, unlike entity attributes, not constant throughout the cycle. We change them in different lives in order to try every single one. After all, the purpose of our passage through the cycles of reincarnation on the physical plane is precisely to obtain the most diverse experience. The shells include goal, primary motivation, mode, dominant mode of action, mood, primary way of seeing life, and center, part of our I, from which we usually respond to external stimuli. The roles of the entity, as we remember, are only 7. Each of the personality shells also has 7 types. The number 7 generally plays an important role not only in the Michael system, but also in other metaphysical teachings, 7 planes, 7 chakras, 7 races, etc. Our shells are part of the detailed plan of life that we develop for each of our incarnations. The plan of life also takes into account agreements made with other souls who will help us, and we help them. The central and most important part of the life plan is called the task of life. This is the most important thing we have to achieve in an individual life. As there are no good or bad soul ages, roles, and frequencies, so there are no good and bad shells. This is a very important provision of the teaching of Michael. Any attribute of an entity or person can be used both negatively and positively, and Michael defines the negative and positive poles for each role and shell. It depends on us which poles we will adhere to. It is a parameter that is within our conscious control during any single life on Earth. In fact, part of Michael's task is to show that these poles exist and that we can remain at the positive pole of our role and any of our shells. Michael's other task is to show us where we humans came from on the physical plane and why we are all so different. Understanding the metaphysical teachings of Michael, which does not contradict other metaphysical teachings, but complements and develops them, will help us become more tolerant of each other and ourselves, and love each other and ourselves with pure, unconditional love, which Michael, according to example of the first Christians, calls the Greek word agape. 7 goals. Of all the shells, goal, mode, main feature, and centering that an entity can choose in any given lifetime, goal is the most significant. A goal is the main achievement towards which an entity aspires in a given life. It defines the basic outline of all life experiences. The most serious tasks that the entity sets for itself relate to the achievement of this goal. The most commonly chosen goals are growth and acceptance. Then come dominance, submission, and relaxation. Less common are discrimination and overestimation. Each entity must try all the goals during its cycle on the physical plane. The same applies to all shells, unlike roles, which don't change throughout the cycle. Slipping. A slip is a temporary transition to another shell. Neutral shells can slide off to any others. The shells that are on the axis of action, expression or inspiration can only slide to the other end of their axis. For example, on the axis of inspiration, a person with a growth goal may slide into overestimation, wanting to find rest there. And someone with a goal of submission can learn to use dominance to achieve their main goal. Often, when a person slips, he chooses the negative pole of the opposite shell. For example, a person with the goal of acceptance begins to reject, sliding into discrimination, and a person with the goal of growth rolls back in development, sliding into overestimation. A neutral shell, such as a relaxation goal or an observation mode, can slip to all other shells. However, a person with a neutral shell usually has favorite places to which he slips. This system is not rigid, as individuals know that sometimes they can use any of the shells. It does, however, explain why people have certain habits and ways of doing things. Sliding happens only at shells, the rolls do not slide off to opposite ends of the axis. So, the king never slips to the warrior to complete some tasks. Sometimes, in the role of a particular person, impurities of some other roles are really felt, but this is usually the result of imprinting by parents and teachers and the influence of the energy of the essential double. Growth and reappraisal, goals of inspiration. Height. If we have chosen the goal of growth, then all our lives we will consider growth to be our main business. A life with such a goal will look like an endless series of tasks, problems, and obstacles, which should polish the character and spiritual nature of the entity. An entity that has chosen this goal will move from solving one problem to working on another and constantly overcome difficulties. She will always create new study programs for herself and almost never allow herself to rest. A person who has this exalted inspired goal will strive for a rich life, for communication with various people and being in a wide variety of situations. He will strive for spiritual growth and problem solving. The result of being on the positive pole of the goal of growth is evolution, a joyful feeling of spiritual understanding. At the negative pole there is confusion. A person does not know where his life is heading and how to cope with its difficulties. People who have this goal try to look smart, educated, knowledgeable and purposeful. People with a growth agenda tend to slip into re-evaluation to rest and rejuvenate. Those who choose this goal are focused on their own growth. But the solution of some problems by them often sets an example for other people. Positive pole. Development, understanding, upward striving, desire to solve problems and overcome difficulties, zeal, essence orientation. Negative pole. Confusion, dependence, absent-mindedness, misunderstanding or ignoring the needs of others, fear of appearing ignorant or not purposeful. Revaluation. Reappraisal is the opposite of growth in the sense that it limits the horizon of life in order to fully explore one or two areas. As an ordinary goal, revaluation is inward and backward. The reassessor is revisiting issues unresolved in the past. People for this purpose often get stuck at the lower levels of the ages, not even reaching the level that they had in a past life. At the positive pole, they reach the state of childish simplicity, in which they can experience their unity with the universe. For example, they may simply be mesmerized by the beauty of a flower or a cloud. For people with the goal of growth, it is useful to slide into the positive pole of revaluation in order to rest and relax. For the purpose of reassessment, a person limits his field of activity for deeper learning. Such people slip into growth in order to broaden their horizons and find new areas of study. Positive pole. Simplicity, innocence, specialization, research, appreciation, revision, closeness to the origins, reverence. Negative pole. Detachment, withdrawal into oneself, lack of movement, embarrassment, misunderstanding of the real circumstances. Acceptance and discrimination, purposes of expression. Adoption. Acceptance is the second most frequently chosen goal after growth. What is central to people throughout life for this purpose can be described as acceptance of the lives of other people and the desire to be accepted by them. People with the goal of acceptance are usually outgoing and friendly and easy to communicate with. Such people are usually cheerful because they want to be accepted by others. As the goal of the expression axis, acceptance causes outward emotional orientation. Acceptance is a spiritual goal, in the sense that the entity is encouraged to accept life and people as they are. At the positive pole, the recipient strives for agape, that is, unconditional love for others. In other words, he tries to accept those around him and their chosen paths of development and recognize the correctness of their actions and decisions. At the negative pole, acceptance can turn into flattery and fawning. Acceptance can also slip to another goal of expression, discrimination. This may look like selective acceptance and rejection. When the receiving person is threatened by something, he usually slips into the negative pole of discrimination and tries to reject first, so as not to be rejected himself. For people, regardless of their goal, rejection is one of the most unpleasant sensations, but those whose goal is acceptance react to it most painfully. Positive pole. Agape, love for humanity, friendliness, sociability, warmth, understanding, self-acceptance. Negative pole. Flattery, fawning, insincerity, fear of not being liked, evasiveness. Discrimination. Discrimination makes people choose what they want or don't want in life. People with this goal develop their critical abilities and learn to express sound opinions on any issue. This process includes getting rid of what a person does not want to see in his life, and the formation or completion of karmas related to discrimination and rejection. Discrimination is usually chosen after several incarnations in which the entity has been prone to over-acceptance or promiscuity. Because it is a goal on the expression axis, people who have a goal of discrimination are usually free to express their opinions about events and people. Moreover, they are always confident in the validity of their statements. People to this end often slip into acceptance, yet remain extremely choosy about what they accept. At the positive pole, this goal looks refined and sophisticated and bound by subtle judgments. At the negative pole there is bias, unfounded assessments, and unreasonable rejection of others. That is, the negative pole of discrimination can be called the opposite of the positive pole of acceptance. It is difficult for people with the goal of acceptance to be in the company of those whose goal is to discriminate, because of the former feeling that they can be rejected at any moment. Positive pole. Refinement, sophistication, striving for perfection, realism, legibility. Negative pole. Prejudice, rejection, tendency to judge everyone and everything, self-confidence, arrogance, snobbery, lack of natural simplicity. Dominance and submission, goals of action. Domination. For people with this goal, life is a game to be won. Dominance goes well with submission. On the positive side, this goal means, I want to be a winner and I want you to win with me. On the negative pole, her motto is, I must win, but I don't care about the losers. People for the purpose of dominance are tempted to win any game they choose for themselves in this particular life. For some, this is about conquering a certain karma or solving the most difficult problem. Others see leadership of people and leadership in society as their goal. Since the entity wants to learn how to use both the positive and negative poles of its goal, a person placed in conditions where the use of both poles is impossible will feel uncomfortable. Thus, if the dominant person constantly finds himself in situations where it is impossible to win, or in conditions where only one can win and the rest must lose, he begins to experience difficulties. One such extreme situation for the dominant personality is war. When representatives of fluid roles, artisans, acolytes, or priests choose to dominate, they begin to appear more grounded, determined, and earthly than when choosing other roles. Domination is the exalted goal of action on the axis. It can be externally framed as the direction and management of people. It is very important for people of this purpose to feel that they are in control of the situation. They are usually determined, sociable, and skillful. On the negative side, they can be dictatorial, demanding, or insensitive to the needs of others. Positive pole: leadership, authority, determination, sociability, giftedness. Negative pole: dictatorship, exactingness, arrogance, suppression, insensitivity. Subordination. Submission gives the entity the opportunity to fully devote itself to some business or provide full measure of support to someone around. The motto of this goal is, I want this person to succeed, for the undertaking to be successful, and I fully support him. This goal makes the individual sensitive to the needs of others and, on the positive pole, disinterested in his service. Exalted roles can use submission to motivate other people to serve a cause. It is possible to imagine an exalted role and yet obey and show devotion. On the positive side, submissive people want to win by supporting other people or causes. At the negative pole, the subordinate can be obsequious and servile, sacrificing himself. I want these people, undertakings, to succeed, and I am ready to make any sacrifices. At the negative pole, person becomes a victim of people or circumstances for the purpose of subjugation. He is not able to control his life and his world. Submission gives the individual a sense of inspiration because it is other-oriented and selfless. Since submission is the goal of action, it is manifested through activity, in the maintenance of those affairs that a person considers important. Positive pole: devotion, caring, help, service to the idea, sensitivity, selflessness. Negative pole: subservience, helplessness, martyrdom, sacrifice. Relaxation, neutral target. The purpose of relaxation is rest and an attempt to learn to go with the flow. The entity chooses this target to recover from a series of difficult lives. The intention of the entity to rest is not always known to the personality. The content of relaxation can be expressed as follows: let life take its course. If a person, for the purpose of relaxation, allows life to carry him freely, he gets everything he wants. In this sense, relaxation is the opposite of the goal of growth, which forces a person to constantly overcome some obstacles and solve problems. Essence poses problems for the personality even in relaxation, but here a corresponding attitude is maintained towards them. Exalted roles find it harder to relax because they are used to being busy in most lives. Just as in the case of other goals, this goal can be set, but not achieved. In this case, this means that a person cannot learn to go with the flow. Relaxation, as a neutral goal, can slip into the other 6 to periodically do something else besides rest. This may be appropriate within the framework of a given karma or arrangement, see later chapters on this, but if the relaxer constantly slides into action and does not rest, he will violate the task of relaxation. At the positive pole, relaxation manifests itself as lightness and the absence of tension. On the negative, it can turn into inertia. People who are aware of their goal of relaxation are more likely to accept that in this life, they must simply relax and go with the flow. Positive pole. Freedom, relaxation, lightness, love for a pleasant pastime. Negative pole. Inertia, laziness, lack of commitment, ignorance.